Hi, Eli. Hi, Vinny. On to chapter 5, Dulce Domum. Here we go. The sheep ran huddling together against the hurdles, blowing out the nostrils and stamping with their delicate forefeet, their heads thrown back and a light steam rising from the crowded sheep pen into the frosty air as the two animals hastened by in high spirits, with much chatter and laughter. They were returning across country after a long day's outing with Otter, hunting and exploring on the wide uplands where certain streams tributaries in their own river had their first small beginnings, and the shades of the short winter days were closing in on them, and they had still some distance to go. Plodding at random across the plow, they had heard the sheep and had made for them, and now, leading from the sheep pen, they had responded. What did they respond? Moreover, to that small inquiry, something which all animals carry inside them, saying unmistakably, "Yes, quite right. This leads home." It looks as if we're coming to a village," said the mole, somewhat dubiously, slacking his pace, as the track that had in time become a path and then developed into a lane now handed them over to the charge of the well-metalled road. The animals did not hold their villages, and their own highways, thickly frequented as they were, took an independent course, regardless of church, post office, or public house. "Oh, never mind," said Rat. "At this season of the year, they're all safe indoors by this time, sitting round the fire, men, women, and children, dogs, cats, and all. We shall slip through all right, without any bother or unpleasantness, and we can have a look at them through their windows, if you like, and see what they're doing." The rapid nightfall of mid-December was quite beset the little village as they approached it, and on their soft feet over a thin fall of powdery snow. Little was visible but squares of dusky orange-red on either side of the street, where the firelight or the lamplight of each cottage overflowed through the casements into the dark without word. Most of the low latticed windows were innocent of blinds, and to the lookers in from outside, the inmates gathered round the tea table, absorbed in handiwork, or talking with laughter and gesture, had each that happy grace which is the last thing the skilled actor shall capture, the natural grace which goes with perfect consciousness of observation. Moving at will from one theater to the other, the two spectators, so far from home themselves, had something of wistfulness in their eyes as they watched a cat being stroked, a sleepy child being picked up and huddled off to bed, or a tired man stretched and knocked out his pipe on the end of a smothering log. But it was from one little window, with its blind drawn down, a mere blank transparency of the night, that the sense of home and the little curtained world window within the walls, the larger stressful world of outside, nature, shut out for the forgotten, most pulsated. Close against the white blind hung a birdcage, clearly silhouetted, every wire perch and appurtenance distinct and recognizable, even in yesteryear's dull-edged lump of sugar. On the middle perch, the fluffy occupant, head tucked well into his feathers, seemed so near to them as to be easily stroked that they tried. Even the delicate tips of the plumped-out plumage penciled plainly on the illuminated screen. As they looked, the sleepy little fellow stirred uneasily, woke, shook himself, and raised his head. They could see the gape of his tiny beak as he yawned in the bored sort of way, looked round, and then settled his head into his back again, while the ruffled feathers gradually subsided into perfect stillness. Then a gust of bitter wind took them in the back of the neck. A small sting of frozen sleet on their skin woke them as from a dream, and they knew their toes to be cold and their legs tired and their own home distant a weary way. Once beyond the village, where the cottages ceased abruptly on either side of the road, they could smell through the darkness the friendly fields again, and they braced themselves for the long stretch, the home stretch, the stretch that they know is bound to end sometime in the rattle of the door latch, the sudden firelight, and the sight of familiar things greeting as long-absent travelers from far oversea. They plodded along steadily and silently, each of them thinking his own thoughts. The mole ran a good deal of supper, as it was pitch dark, and it was a strange country to him, as far as he knew, and he was following obediently in the wake of the rat, leaving the guidance entirely to him. As for the rat, he was walking a little way ahead, as his habit was, his shoulders humped, his eyes fixed on the straight gray road in front of him, as he did not notice poor Mole when suddenly the summons reached him and took him like an electric shock. We others, who have long lost the more subtle of the physical senses, have not even proper terms to express an animal's inner communications with his surroundings, living or otherwise, and have only the word smell, for instance, to include the whole range of delicate thrills which murmur in the nose of an animal night and day, summoning, warning, inciting, repelling. It was one of those mysterious fairy calls from out of the void, and suddenly reached Mole in the darkness, making him tingle through and through with a very familiar appeal, even while as yet he could not clearly remember what it was. He stopped, dead in his tracks, his nose searching hither and thither in its efforts to recapture the fine filament, the telegraphic current that had so strongly moved him. A moment, and he caught it again, and with it, this time came a recollection in fullest flood. Home! That was what they meant. Those caressing appeals, those soft touches waved through the air, those invisible little hands pulling and tugging all one way. Why, it must be quite close by him at that moment, and his old home that he hurriedly forsaken and never sought again, that day when he first found the river. And now it was sending him out, its scouts and its messengers, to capture him and bring him in. Since his escape on this bright morning, he had hardly given it a thought, so absorbed had he been in his new life, in all its pleasures and its surprises, its fresh and captivating experiences. Now, with a rush of old memories, how clearly it stood up before him in the darkness. Shabby indeed, and small and poorly furnished, and yet his, the home he had made for himself, the home he had been so happy to get back to after his day's work. And the home had been happy with him too, evidently, and was missing him and wanted him back, and was telling him so through his nose, sorrowfully, reproachfully, but with no bitterness or anger, only with plaintive reminder that it was there and they wanted him. The call was clear, the summons was plain. He must obey it instantly and go. "Ratty," he called, full of joyful excitement, "hold on, come back. I want you quick." "Oh, come along, Mole, do," replied the rat cheerfully, still plodding along. "Please, stop, Ratty," pleaded the poor Mole in anguish and heart. "You don't understand. It's my home, my old home. I've come across the smell of it, and it's close by here, really close. And I must go to it. I must. Oh, come back, Ratty. Please, please come back." The rat was by this time very far ahead, too far to hear clearly what the mole was calling to, far to catch the sharp note of painful appeal in his voice. And he was much taken upon with the weather, for he too could smell something suspiciously like approaching snow. "Mole, we mustn't stop now, really," he called back. "We'll come for it tomorrow, whatever it is you have found. But I daren't stop now. It's late, and the snow's coming on again, and I'm not quite sure of the way, and I want your nose, Mole. So come on quick. There's a good fellow." And the rat pressed forward on his way without waiting for an answer. Poor Mole stood alone in the road, his heart torn asunder, and a big sob gathering somewhere low down inside him to leap up to the surface presently, he knew, in passionate escape. But even under such a test as his loyalty to his friend stood firm. Never for a moment did he dream of abandoning him. Meanwhile, the waifs from his old home pleaded, whispered, conjured, and finally claimed him imperiously. He dared not tarry longer within their magic circle. With a wrench, he tore his very heartstrings. He set his face down in the road and followed submissively in the track of the rat. while faint, thin smells, still dodging his retreating nose, reproached him for his new friendship and his callous forgetfulness. With an effort, he caught up to the unsuspecting rat, who began chattering cheerfully about what they would do when they got back, and how jolly a fire of logs in the parlor would be, and what a supper he meant to eat, never noticing his companion's silence and distressful state of mind. At last, however, when they had gone some considerably way further, and were passing some tree stumps at the edge of the copse that they bordered the road, they stopped and said kindly, "Look here, Mole, old chap, you seem dead tired. No talk left in you, and your feet dragging like lead. We'll sit down here for a minute and rest. The snow is held off so far, and the best part of the journey is over." The mole subsided forlornly on the tree stump and tried to control himself, for he felt it surely coming. The sob he had fought with so long refused to be beaten. Up and up it forced its way into the air, and then another and other tricks and fast, till poor Mole at last gave up with a struggle and cried freely and helplessly and openly, now that he knew it was all over, and he had lost what he could hardly be said to have found. The rat, astonished and dismayed at the violence of Mole's paroxysm of grief, did not dare to speak for a while. At last he said very quietly and sympathetically, "What is it, old fellow? Whatever can be the matter? Tell us your trouble and let us see what I can do." Poor Mole found it difficult to get any words out between the upheavals of his chest that followed one upon another so quickly, and held back speech and choked it as it came. I know it's a shabby, dingy little place," he sobbed forth at last brokenly. "Not like your cozy quarters, or Toad's beautiful hall, or Badger's great house, but it was my own little home, and I was fond of it, and I went away and forgot all about it, and then I smelt it suddenly on the road when I called you, and you wouldn't listen, Rat, and everything came back to me with a rush, and I wanted it. Oh dear, and when you wouldn't turn back, Ratty, and I had to leave it, though I was smelling it all the time, I thought my heart would break. We must have just gone and had one look at it, Ratty. Only one look. It was close by, but you wouldn't turn back. Ratty, you wouldn't turn back. Oh dear. Recollection brought fresh waves of sorrow, and sobs again took full charge of him, preventing further speech. The rat stared straight in front of him, saying nothing, only patting Mole gently on the shoulder. After a time, he muttered gloomily, "I see it all now. What a pig I have been. A pig, that's me, just a pig, a plain pig." He waited till Mole's sob became gradually less stormy and more rhythmical. He waited till all the last sniffs were frequent and sobs were intermittent. Then he rose from his seat and remarkably carelessly, "Well, now you really better be getting on, old chap," set off up the road again, over the Trolson way they had come. "Wherever you are going, Ratty," cried the tearful Mole, looking at the alarm. "We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow," replied the rat pleasantly. "So you had better come along, for it will take some finding, and we shall want your nose." "Oh, come back, Ratty, do," cried the Mole, getting up and hurrying after her. "It's no good, I tell you. It's too late, and too dark, and the place is too far off, and the snow's coming, and I never meant to let you know I was feeling that way about it. It's all an accident and mistake. And think of the riverbank and your supper." I think this is a good place for us to stop, baby. Let's look at his. This is when they are going through the village, or is that the Mole's place? "Villagers, all this forest you died." No. Well, anyway, I think that was his old house that they're trying to find, so we'll read that tomorrow. Love you, sweetheart. Mwah!